All right, welcome in, everybody. It is Sports Daily. It is a Friday. It's Jacob and Tommy, Jad producing for us. Jake Ballbrock, Tommy Castor here. Glad to be with you. We've got the IHOP hotline wide open for you here in hour number one. 869-1240 is that number to call. Wichita State baseball took over yesterday. We moved our K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald to today. We'll have that top of the next hour. We'll talk about Wichita State baseball. The Eastern Conference Finals continue. News for Patrick Mahomes and the contract that is or isn't being worked on currently. All kinds of good stuff for you. It is the beginning of state track, which is a big deal here around Wichita. Glad to be here with you. Tommy, good morning. How are you?
Good to be back. Ready to get into it on a Friday. And been a couple days since I've been on the show. Of course, we didn't have a show yesterday and was out on Wednesday. Thanks to Paul for filling in. But good to be here and ready to dive right in.
Let's get right into it. We'll begin today with the most recent thing that happened last night, the Eastern Conference Finals. 13-point win for the Celtics. And the thoughts, it's starting to creep into our head a little bit that, could history be made? It was a Boston team, the first time we saw this in Major League Baseball. It's a Boston team that, we all think is more talented trying to do this again. But against Miami, 4-2. Not panic time for Miami, but certainly worry time, I think, for Miami, Tommy, as they now get to go back home. And, you got to go back home and win that game at home, right? It's kind of simple for Miami, but for Boston, they're alive, right? They're alive and they have a chance. So you're telling me there's a chance. I think that there probably is a chance here.
Yeah, I think the mindset has changed a little bit, from Miami playing loose, playing with house money. Nobody expected them to be here. And then all of a sudden they go up 3-0. And of course, the betting lines start to change some, and the conversation starts to, already be a foregone conclusion that Miami's going to make the finals. And then Boston desperately wins game 4. Then they come in, they look really good, and they win game 5. So we've got ourselves a series now. The mission, like you mentioned, it's very simple for the Heat. You got to win game 6. You can't let this series go to a game 7. You can't let Boston feel like they've got a chance to make an epic comeback, and win 4 in a row. So you've got to stamp out the fire right now in game 6 at home. That's the mission. It's very simple for Miami.
It is. But it's easier said than done, right? Because we do think roster to roster, the Boston's better. We've always thought that, right? Like that's always been on the table. And, Jimmy Butler's guaranteeing a series win and all these things, and they're trying to rally the troops. He wasn't fantastic last night by any means, right? He only took 10 shots for some reason. Like that seems so strange to me. When you see things like that, when you go back to game 4 that they lost, Jimmy Butler still had his normal volume and all those things. So, I don't know what Boston's doing. I'm glad to see it, quite frankly, because we're going to have to wait for the NBA Finals. We might as well get a good series on the way there. I think, it's what's really interesting. Boston still has better odds to win the NBA title than Miami does. Isn't that crazy? Like, I don't know that we've and we haven't followed it closely enough to know this, right? Betting now just legal in Kansas. We're still making it through our first full cycle of that. But I can't imagine there have been very many times where a team down 3-2 in their current conference final would be a bigger betting favorite to win it all than the team up 3-2. And it just speaks to still this perception of Miami that exists. And I get it. We've talked about it from the moment Miami was up, 2-0, 3-0. We're like, I just don't get it. And all it is the roster. I mean, that's all it is. But it's interesting. I'm glad we're getting this in this series because the alternative would have been to wait, a week and a half, 2 weeks for the NBA Finals.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, the Celtics dug themselves a pretty deep hole. I mean, you can't dig a deeper hole than down 3-0. But here they are. They're clawing back. Do I think that Boston has the overall makeup on paper to be able to win 4 in a row and stun Miami? I mean, I think their roster will show that they probably are capable of doing that, but they haven't shown a whole lot of consistency, I don't feel like, to be able to do that. They haven't shown that so far in the playoffs, right? Like think back to the Philly series. Their backs are up against the wall a little bit against Philly also, went to a game 7, and here we go, like with Miami, right? The one thing that I think was really important for the Celtics in this game last night was the fact that they played a balanced game. They shot the 3 really, really well. Their stars came out, in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, had really good games. Marcus Smart scored 23 points, which was nice to see for Boston.
Yeah.
Derek White, had over 20 points in the game too. So they were very, very balanced, very efficient in their shooting as well. So that was something that I feel like had been lacking in this particular series for Boston moving forward. They're going to need another effort like that on Saturday night in Miami. But if they shoot the ball like that tomorrow night, like they did last night, yeah, I think they could run into Miami and absolutely get a win.
Oh, sure. Look, that's what's crazy about this, right? We always like to speak in hyperbole and say, not going to happen. Can't happen. Series is over, right? I don't know
Series
that anybody's
ain't over.
Well, and I don't know that we've ever been willing to call it that. Like we've wanted to, and I think we've hinted at it, right? Because Boston was just not, Boston was not playing well. I don't know, but like it hasn't like okay, for instance, Denver LA. Like we were read that series is over, right? Like
Yeah.
series is done. This one felt different. Definitely still thought and think that Boston's not going to get it done because history tells us they're not going to. But boy, it feels like it's possible. And that's good. That's all as fans, like that's all we could hope for, right? And history's only history until it's broken one time. We've seen it time and time again. It's gonna happen. Somebody's going to come back from down 3-0. If you're Boston, why not now? Right? Like, why not
Yeah.
now? And I think you've got a compelling NBA Finals either way. If I'm Denver, I'm certainly rooting for Miami to get this done quietly, right? I don't want to face Boston over Miami anyway. I certainly don't want to face a red hot Boston with its hair on fire. Like that would be, especially after I've had to sit out and wait now. So we've got something here, and I'm excited about it. I'm glad we have something because again, the alternative would have kind of sucked, right? Like we just have to sit here and wait. Blah. The next game will be on Saturday, by the way.
Right. I think it does bring up a really interesting question that, people have debated for years and years, basically with any sport, any playoff series, whether or not momentum is a real thing, whether or not you believe in momentum, being something that is valid, and real in any kind of playoff series. And so if you believe in momentum, then clearly Boston has it, right? If you don't, you can toss it out the window and you can say Miami has been the better coach team throughout this series. Basically when you combine the entire thing together and look at the overall series from a 30,000-foot view, Miami's been a better coach team. They've overall played better. So I think that you can have that argument about how much you believe in momentum being a real thing. What I do believe in, regardless of momentum, I do believe that Boston has made the proper adjustments in game 4 and game 5 and played with an appropriate amount of desperation, knowing that it's win or go home, right? And that's been the way it's been the last 2 games for Boston. That's the way it's going to be in game 6 and potentially a game 7.
Yeah, it's just the momentum thing. Let's talk about that. I don't know how if you've ever played a sport or just in life in general, like momentum is obviously a real thing. Like different things motivate us, right? Like we're motivated in different ways all the time. Like, is there this tangible energy in the air that grants one team something? No, but that's not what momentum is. Momentum is confidence. Momentum is like, man, like if you can't see the different psychology in game 3 versus game 5, right, of that series, like it is tangible. Boston is playing with more confidence. They have momentum. And like in life, like momentum feels like it, ebbs and flows in both directions, right? Like you're on a heater. You can't miss, whether it's at your job or you just keep on doing good things. Like that is positive momentum. Or when you let things snowball in the other way, like that's negative momentum, but it does feed off of itself. So yeah, I believe in that. Now, does that mean that Miami like doesn't have momentum? No, I don't think so. I don't think it's this end all be all, but clearly Boston has a different energy about them. And you can call that momentum or whatever you want to call it. I call it momentum. And Miami's got to do everything it can to stop that and get back to, what it was doing to keep Boston going the other direction. That will be interesting to see if they can do it because again, talent to talent, Boston's better. Miami might have, the best player at the moment in a playoff Jimmy Butler. I'm not saying Jimmy Butler's a better player than Jason Tatum, but playoff Jimmy Butler's as good as anybody, right? So they've got that and they've got the coach and they've got a team that's bought in. And I don't get the sense from anything we've seen out of Miami that this is the type of team that would panic. They haven't had to, right? They've sort of taken things through the postseason in a very confident way. So we'll see. I still think Miami gets a win in the next 2 games. But I mean, what am I going to call? 55-45. Like, I'm not tremendously confident in that.
I think that I've kind of changed my perception a little bit on Boston after last night. I'm actually going to be more disappointed now if Boston doesn't win the series than I was when they were down 3-0, because when they were down 3-0, it's like, throw them away, put them in the garbage. It's done. They're washed, they're cooked, all of that. Miami's going to win this series and move to the finals. Now Boston has played with their hair on fire in game 4 and game 5. They played desperate, and they've shown what this team is capable of. They've shown the caliber of basketball when the Celtics are playing at their peak, how good they can be. And I would love to see that against Denver in the NBA Finals, right? I think that would be an incredibly entertaining finals to watch. Not that Denver, Miami won't be. It'll be fine in different ways. But man, like after watching Boston in games 4 and 5, I find myself being like, man, if they fall now, if they lose in game 6 or lose in game 7, I'm going to be wildly disappointed, because they gave me hope. They gave me hope that they could do it. They gave me hope that they could advance into the NBA Finals for what could be an all-time great series against Denver.
Well, I think you have, and I agree, because I think it's pretty easy to make the case that top to bottom, Denver and Boston are the two best teams in the league. Now, Milwaukee felt like it had a case at that. I would take Boston's roster over Milwaukee. But, make that argument if you'd like. Either way, it's close, right? Like, these are the two best teams that have been, best or real close to it all season long. And it would be.
And by the way, I just want to say really quick, think about, to your point, how good defensively Boston has been. And then, throughout the entire season, and then watching them take on Nikola Jokic and the great roster that Denver has. Like, man, I would love to watch that.
And the legacy series that you'd have, because Jimmy Butler is in no danger. Like, his legacy's not in any whatever. It's not even up for debate, right? But boy, Jason Tatum and Nikola Jokic's would be, right? That would be a legacy series.
Yep.
And if all goes well, look, if Boston comes back and does something historic here and wins this series, even if they were to lose the finals at that point, I think there is a moderate chance that they could keep most of that roster together. They lose this series to the Heat, I'm not sure. And so, you could also get like round 1 of a potential 5-year rivalry type deal, which could be incredible too. Like, all those things that we love about basketball are online. But they got to win 2 more games. Miami is, they're the Cinderella here, and we'll see if they can get it done. They need to get 1 done, and the most pressure obviously comes to get it at home in the next one, and that'll be on Saturday night. But I'm glad we're getting an entertaining series out of this, because it looked like it may not be from the very beginning. A lot here for you. The IHOP hotline is open. 869-1240 is that number. We've got giveaways to get to today. Tim Fitzgerald, our K-State insider, joins us top of the next hour. We've got a lot of different topics. Next, we'll talk a little about Wichita State baseball. No wins in the conference tournament. The season's over. What does that mean for the future? We'll hit it next. Sports Daily continues. It's all Brockton Caster. It's a Friday. TGIF. We'll be right back.
Beach.
Welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Jacob Albrock, Tommy Castor. It is a Friday before Memorial Day weekend. I put Memorial Day weekend up there with any holiday weekend that we celebrate in this country. One, because of what it means. It is an incredible weekend to think about some of the things that we think about on Memorial Day. Comes at a great time of the year, the unofficial start of summer. But Memorial Day weekend, hope everybody has a great one, enjoys it. Tommy and I will be barbecuing, and it's, got a lot on the line here to bring the good, it's one of those unofficial, competitions to some degree of like what you bring to the table,
Yeah, I'm smoking some baby back ribs, which I'm known for and should be incredible. If anybody wants the recipe, let me know. I'd be happy to share it. And you're doing something else that doesn't really matter. I mean, what really matters doesn't really matter. The ribs,
hot legs,
that'll be the star of the show.
Spicy, sort of buffalo style drumsticks. And if you want that recipe, you can't have it because I won't give it to you. It was sworn to secrecy to me by a master chef that I knew growing up, a family. And I can't remember how I weaseled it out, but I did. You can't have it. So
there's a reason why your hot legs that you're making are the appetizer and my ribs will actually be the main attraction.
We'll see. We'll see what everybody gravitates to. We'll see how that goes. I'm confident. I know these things. I know how they perform because I've used them before. And when you've got hot legs making hot legs, you can't miss. And that's just how it goes. And it's swimming trunk season, so you're going to see multiple hot legs out there at the barbecue. All right, let's talk a little Shocker baseball. IHOP hotline's open, 869-1240. No wins in the conference tournament. 3-11 down the stretch after they had a point and were in position in first place in the American. It was not a good finish to the season for the Shockers. It was overall circumstantially a nice season for the Shockers when we consider the turmoil going into it. It was a 30-25 finish. Again, an opportunity. I do think we've got to be fair and say an opportunity missed down the stretch. But I think if we all looked back to, I don't know, when does the baseball season start? Let's say January, and thought about what this team might do, I don't think we would have guessed 30-25 in a third place finish in the league, which is ultimately what they got when they were projected to finish fifth to begin the season. Lauren Hibbs was named the conference coach of the year. The question now is very obvious to everybody, and the elephant in the room is what happens at head coach long term. Kevin Saul has a decision to make. Does he make Lauren Hibbs the full-time head coach, remove that interim tag, or does he go in a different direction? Tommy, we talk a lot about this off the air. I don't have a hot take on this because I don't fully understand what exists in the world of college baseball and the challenges and the dynamic of it. Wichita State baseball, since I've come here, has not reached the level that you would hope when you move to Wichita and the history of Wichita State baseball. The Gene Stevenson situation was a mess. That's been rectified off the field, right? Like that. I don't think that any longer lingers over the program in any way. So that's good news. It did not work with Todd Butler. Todd Butler did not win enough games, brought in a lot of talent, but didn't win enough games even close to it. Eric Wedge, we all thought was the perfect idea, right? You've got this Shocker legend, as legendary as any player that's ever played in the program, has had success at every level of the big leagues and all of these things, and that did not work at all. Didn't work at all. And now you've had Lauren Hibbs in an interim position who's done a nice job, also been with the Shockers forever, has coached college baseball forever, but 5 games over 500 and a missed opportunity at the end of the year. I don't think it's a slam dunk in any direction. I don't have a hot take on it. I think I'd like to see Hibbs get, a year or two. to see what he can do with, the full gamut. You got to recruit, you got to do all those things. And yeah, and he's won tons of games in college baseball. I don't know how much the portal and all that stuff and NIL has changed college baseball. I don't know that. Like we're more aware of it, right, in football and basketball, where I'm not as aware of it in baseball. So again, it's hard for me to come here and say, here's what they have to do, because I don't think that that's a have to do situation. I think it will be interesting. We've heard how much from day one Kevin Saul values Wichita State baseball and wants it to be back to its former glory, because it is a headline program when it is. So I don't know. I don't know what will happen, but I think Loren, no matter what happens, Loren Hibbs done a nice job and made this a conversation, which I'm not sure many of us would have thought that was possible when everything was happening 5-6 months ago.
I do think it's a slam dunk, and I will, I guess, have a hot take on it. I think that Kevin Saul should give Loren Hibbs the permanent job. And I'm not necessarily thinking that he needs to sign him to a 5 or 6 year long deal. Give him a 2 or 3 year long contract to get started, assuming he wants the job. Again, we still don't know, if Loren Hibbs wants the permanent job or not. But if he does, I do think it's a slam dunk. And the reason why, yeah, we can talk all day about how the Shockers didn't get any wins in the conference tournament. We can talk all day about how they sort of stumbled to the finish line this season, about how they finished 5 games over 500, a third place finish, when the expectations, I think generally speaking for Shocker baseball, should be to win the league because of the way that Shocker baseball, historically has been. That being said, this season could have been an unmitigated disaster after everything that happened with Eric Wedge before the season even started. Loren Hibbs came in, he steadied the ship, and he led the Shockers to a winning record and a third place finish in the conference. And at one point had the Shockers in the conversation for first in the conference and a top 25 ranking, which hasn't happened in a long time. So I do think that knowing the circumstances around the Eric Wedge situation, what Loren Hibbs did this season is incredibly impressive, and I think has earned him the opportunity to be the permanent head coach. And before anybody says, well, didn't we learn our lesson with the Isaac Brown situation at Wichita State with basketball? It's apples and oranges. It's a completely different situation because of the fact that Loren Hibbs has 3 decades of head coaching experience and is in the top 20 nationally of winningest active coaches in America. Isaac Brown didn't have that. Loren Hibbs does. The track record is there. The pedigree is there. The connection to Wichita State is there. I don't think that Kevin Saul is going to be able to find anybody more qualified or any better to run this program next season than Loren Hibbs.
That becomes the question. Can you find somebody more qualified? And so I think that, what you'll see in this debate, and it is just a conversation, because ultimately it's not our decision to make anyway, but I think what you're going to see is, and the reason so many people were seemingly upset with Isaac Brown, there were some people, I think there were two different groups. There were some people that just didn't think Isaac Brown should get the job flat no matter what, period, right? I think that was unreasonable. What probably was reasonable, and look, I fully was endorsing Isaac Brown for that job. What was probably more reasonable is the camp that said we have to open up the search nationally to see what's out there. And then if you land on Isaac Brown, great, right? I think there was plenty of people that felt that way. And, the perception was that it was never even really opened up in the first place with the Isaac Brown situation. The other difference is Isaac Brown won the league, right? He had like a massive roster mess and won the league. I think that's another difference there. But so you'll have, there is nothing wrong to me with opening up a search and seeing what's out there. And then you can ultimately land on Hibbs. I think the pressure for Saul is going to come in that, right? Like you have to at least see what's out there. I think so many people felt like that.
You
don't think you open up a search?
No. What has Loren Hibbs done this season that would lead anybody to believe that he's not capable of leading?
They went 30 and 25. I don't want to overstate how good they were in a one bid league. They went 30 and 25 and finished 3-8 when they had a chance to win that one bid.
When they were projected to finish 5th in the league,
they finished 2 spots above their projection. When Isaac Brown got the job,
they overperformed.
when Isaac Brown got the job, they finished first in a year they were picked 7th.
And that's the issue. That's the issue right there. If we were just viewing this on its own, then I don't think that there would even really be much of a debate about whether or not Lauren Hibbs was deserving of the head coaching position.
View it on its
but
own.
You have to everybody's viewing it through the lens of what happened with basketball when they're completely different. It's a completely different situation, and it's unfair to Lauren Hibbs and the baseball program to judge him and what his team did this season on what happened with Isaac Brown and Greg Marshall in the basketball program 3 years ago.
It might be unfair, but it's reality. Life's not fair. There is, because you owe it to, like, ultimately,
you owe it to who?
You owe it to the fan base. The fan base, you got to put butts in those seats, right? Like,
if they were projected to finish 5th and Lauren Hibbs took that job over and they finished 9th, or they were awful and it was a disaster, then absolutely open it up and let's go try to find somebody who can lead this program. But there was nothing to me this season that indicated that Lauren Hibbs was not capable of running this program and leading it to success.
I don't think there's anybody on the planet that doesn't think Lauren Hibbs is capable. I think the people that, and I don't know, like, here's the other thing about this. This different than of course he's capable, but does that mean he's the absolute best person for the job just because he's capable?
Tell me who else is out there that could potentially be interested in this job that has led a team to 7 NCAA tournament appearances.
I've already told
like Lauren Hibbs did at Charlotte. I mean,
there will be candidates. I don't know who they are because I don't follow college baseball that way. The name that we've talked about that will get brought up that I would absolutely entertain is Kevin Hooper. Now, let me preface this with a big fat asterisk, right? And say Kevin Hooper's probably not interested in this because Kevin Hooper's on track to be a Major League Baseball general manager at some point. He's the director of player development right now for the best organization in baseball at developing players. And he's been promoted essentially to that from other organizations. Kevin Hooper has strapped a rocket to his butt and is just flying through the big leagues. But when we say open it up, and I don't want this to also sound like I'm advocating for this because I'm not. I don't have a hot take on this. I'm just having the conversation of the difficulties in making this decision. But if somebody like Kevin Hooper, who's also a Shocker legend, by the way, who also has head coaching experience and managerial experience and all those things and organizational experience and player development experience and now connections to big league teams, which is attractive in recruiting, then what is the harm, Tommy, in just saying who's interested in this job? I think
the harm in that is that it is a little disrespectful to Lauren Hibbs and the job that he's done this year. Like, I don't know.
Would Lauren Hibbs have gotten that job if Eric Wedge wasn't fired?
He certainly has the pedigree for it.
When you were given an interim tag, don't you fully understand that that's an interim tag?
Sure.
Disrespectful is too harsh. Like, that's not fair at all.
I think it is.
Nobody ever said, all right, Lauren Hibbs, like, if you guys go 30-25 and finish 3rd or better in the league, it's your job. Like, nobody says that.
I don't think that. I don't think it was lined out like that for Lauren Hibbs, but I do think that there is an argument that can be made, and I guess I'll be the one to go ahead and make it, that, this guy led the Shockers to a successful season. Now, maybe it didn't finish the way that anybody wanted it to. Maybe they stumbled at the very end, but I think by and large, circumstantial, everything played into it, a successful season for Wichita State baseball. And then you say, hey, nice job. What, you did better than, what was expected of you. That was nice. Now we're going to go ask a lot of other people if they want the job. And it would be different if he was a guy that didn't
asking
have.
them if they want the job. It's not asking them if they want the job. That would indicate or imply that you're offering the job. You can open it up and see who's interested without ever offering the job to anybody. I think what's fair, and again, let me say this again, I would hire Lauren Hibbs. I would give Hibbs a 1 to 2 year contract. That's what I would do, right? That's what I would. I guess advocate for, but I don't want to say I'm advocating for it because, again, I'm pleading ignorance in this. I don't understand the inner workings of college baseball enough to definitively say anything. But I think what's fair to all parties, there is nothing wrong to me with having conversations with the players first and foremost. Get the real feel inside the program from the players because that matters the most, right? in the aftermath? What do you guys think? Like, tell us what you think. You make it a national search, which is fair to the fan base who wants the absolute to know that they're getting the absolute best candidate that's available. And then ultimately you make your decision. And again, if that comes back to Lauren Hibbs, I don't think that's disrespectful. I don't think it's unfair. I don't think it's anything. I think it's being honest with the situation.
Look, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Just because Kevin Saul can open up a search and go talk to people, and maybe Kevin Saul wants his own guy, right? Like we saw that in basketball.
Yeah, because his job's on the line
women's
too.
Basketball, right?
Kevin Saul's job is on the line. Don't forget that either.
I get the position that he's in, but just because you can make a change doesn't mean you should make a change. And you and I talked about it off air yesterday about, you mentioned the Gene Stevenson situation. And I know that you just said at the very top of this segment that, all of that's been patched up. I mean, maybe off the field it has, and I think Gene Stevenson probably has a good relationship now with the university where he didn't right after he was let go. But I think on the field, they're still suffering. I think they have for the last decade. They're still coming off of the fact that they let a Shocker legend. The grass is not always greener.
I'm the biggest advocate of that.
Just because you can make a change doesn't mean that you should make a change. And I think that it would be different if Lauren Hibbs, number one, didn't have 27 years of head coaching experience, multiple NCAA tournament bids, multiple conference championships, led the Shockers to a better than expected finish this season when it could have been a disaster. All of that into play, to me, tells me that give him the job. Let him have it. You don't need to open it up. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should.
Opening it up and giving him the job can both happen. I think that, so the other thing that Lauren Hibbs brings to the table that he's a high character guy, which does clearly matter to this administration. And that's a big check in the right direction. I just we also can't be naive to the fact that there's a lot of, Kevin Saul's job's on the line with a lot of these decisions, right? If Paul Mills doesn't work out, Kevin Saul probably doesn't work out. If they have a disaster in baseball and basketball isn't also immediately great, Kevin Saul's job's on the line too. So again, naivety from me. I would give it to Hibbs. But I have no issues seeing what's out there whatsoever. I don't think it's a slam dunk. You do. It's interesting nonetheless. And we will probably, I would guess, find out here pretty quick. Because you got to move, these things move relatively quickly. Yeah, the other thing is you and I don't know, or I don't anyway. I don't know if you've had conversation with him. I'm not 100% sure Hibbs wants it. I get the indication that he does based on things that I've heard. And the other thing that I don't do as much now in my capacity as I did prior to my larger role in TV is I don't talk to the players all the time. And so I'd want to have that conversation too. But we're going to get movement on it pretty quick. At the end of the day, got to get butts in the seats at X Stadium again. Period. Full stop. So for me, whatever does that, do that, right? And Hibbs, great job this season. There is no debating that they did a great job circumstantially or otherwise. It was a nice year for Wichita State baseball. Did not end well. And now we enter an off season of interest because they have a lot of young players. They have a lot potentially returning outside of the player of the year and Brock Rodden. I think just about everybody else is eligible to come back. So that's also a factor in the decision too. And why a conversation with the players needs to be the absolute first thing that happened. Who do they advocate for? That's what I want to know first. All right, 869-1240 is the number to call. We'll come back. We got some giveaways, a lot to get to. We got Tim Fitzgerald coming up top of hour number 2. It's Sports Daily. It's a Friday. It's almost a weekend, everybody. We'll help get you there.
It's time to get back to the sports talk.
All right, let's do this thing. Go!
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Let's give something away. It's Jacob Albrecht and Tommy Castor. It is Sports Daily on a Friday. How about some ticket vouchers for the Wichita Wind Surge? Good for any home game. We'll give those away to you. Let's do it to our first caller here on the IHOP hotline. Again, 869-1240. Those vouchers, by the way, again, can be redeemed for any game of your choice, courtesy of us here at Sports Daily and KFH. Also, if you're driving around tomorrow, I will be on CBS Sports Radio from 11 to 4. So you'll hear me here on KFH from 11 to 3 tomorrow when the Royals take over. So if you'd like to join in, call in, and be a part of that tomorrow, you can. Another one of those national deals where we can talk to everybody. And we do occasionally get some Wichita callers. Always appreciate that when that happens on that platform. NBA Finals last night. We've talked about it, but the Heat in a little trouble here. They come back home Saturday and don't face elimination, but they face a pretty big, daunting game at home to try and keep a Game 7 away. And they're dogs, Tommy. They're 2.5-point dogs at home. We're starting to see some of that again. I do think that's an opportunity to bet Miami. It's an interesting one. The NBA playoffs have been so hard to bet. Miami getting points with Miami has been probably the easiest bet in the postseason, but they're facing it here. They're kind of up against it to some degree. The next hour, let's talk about. We don't have time yet, but we will in the next hour, just to sort of tee things up for everybody. We got to get into this Patrick Mahomes contract situation. It's fascinating. It is really, really interesting to see this thing playing out. Mahomes has now talked about it in OTAs, which I think that people are really thinking something's there that maybe isn't there. So we'll talk about that. State track gets started. LeBron has a foot injury. State track real quick, Tommy. How big a state track guy are you out at Cessna before they start the renovations as soon as it's done?
It's been a few years since I've actually been out there, but I mean, there were a number of years that I would go and I would watch, and it's fun spectating. It's fun viewing. There's always something going on around that complex, and so it's fun to watch. And it's not just state track. I mean, obviously that's going on. You've got state baseball, you've got state softball. Like, there's a lot happening this weekend, not only here in Wichita, but around the state.
Yeah, state baseball and softball started yesterday. Plenty of area teams still alive. Catch It Kansas, by the way, we'll have you covered on all this. Our crews are out there just going nuts for this. So catchitkansas.com, and we'll be all over state track. It's a monster event to try to cover. It's fantastic, though. I love it, and it just always amplifies the reason to me that it's crazy that we don't do one-site state tournaments for every sport. It doesn't all even have to be in the same place, right? Like, come on. Like, get these. Everybody knows state track is this amazing event. We could have that with every sport. We could.
I also don't understand why we try to cram in baseball, softball, and track in the same weekend. Like, couldn't we do enough time? Baseball one weekend, softball one weekend, track one weekend.
Because you'd probably be
or at least alternate days or something like that. I mean, you would cram it all in.
You'd have to do one of two things. You would either have to shorten the season and give fewer games to kids, or you'd have to have them playing into the summer, which I think both of those things probably would like to be avoided if possible. That one's sort of necessary and understandable to me. But the fact that we don't do it all in one place, nah, that's not for me, man. Let's get them all in one place. State track's the shining example. Everybody loves it. 869-1240 will come back. Tim Fitzgerald joins us top of the next hour. Our K-State Insider. We'll have that for you and much more as Sports Daily rolls into hour number 2 on a Friday.
NFL Morning. Wichita's radio voice of Kansas City Royals baseball, KFH. Jacob Albrocht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
He's got all the insight on what you want to know and maybe some of what you don't want to know. Here's K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald.
All right, welcome back, everybody. A little sandstorm means Tim Fitzgerald joins us. GoPowerCat.com. That's Tim's jam. Jacob Albrocht, Tommy Castor, headed into the holiday weekend. Tim, what are you throwing on the grill this weekend?
Oh, boy, I haven't even thought that far ahead. I got to go to the store. I'm panicking now.
I haven't either. Hopefully it's not. Here's what I'll ask you. It's a blind question for you, Tim. What sounds more appetizing? Tommy's ribs or Jacob's hot legs?
It's just about food.
Does it matter?
Because I'm sure Tommy's ribs and Jacob's hot legs are sexy. It just depends on the moment. They actually sound both pretty good. I mean, it depends on
We're gonna have a little
what I'm looking for.
We're gonna have a little cooking. We're gonna have a little cooking, and we'll see what everybody thinks. Tommy's pretty confident. And it wasn't a competition before about a half hour ago, but I'm starting to think it sort of is now.
Hey, and by the way, Fitz, you're invited. So if you'd like to take
you'll come
a
up to
jaunt down
Wichita.
to come down to Wichita on Sunday and try Jacob's hot legs, I guess you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, well, I'm now thinking of Rod Stewart's song. So anyhow, I might be too old of a reference for either one of you.
Tim, I don't, it is, if there is a slow time, it's slow. K-State had a huge win in baseball, right? They knocked off Texas. We don't follow Big 12 baseball that closely, but K-State baseball's been interesting this year. I mean, where do they stand? Are they at large-y? They've been very, very all over the map as far as like rankings and what different publications have them at. Are they in a win and in situation, or are they at large capable?
That's a good question. I think until beating Texas yesterday, they were out. They had finished the season so miserably, winning 2 of their last 7, as far as I can remember. It was just a horrible ending. And but now they might be peeking back in on the edge of things. This afternoon's game, I think it's this afternoon, with Kansas is huge. Not intended as an insult to Kansas. They are the 8th seed, so losing to them might guarantee that they're out. So they pretty much need to win this thing and get back with another crack at TCU. They're just not playing their best baseball in the final phase of the regular season. I fear they're out, but they're closer to in after beating Texas. And how about Texas? The number 1 seed comes in and loses 2 games and goes home. So I think that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I was reading up on the upset yesterday, Tim, and I didn't realize the shutout that K-State had against Texas yesterday was their first in the Big 12 tournament since 1976. So we've been talking a long time since K-State able to shut out a team in the Big 12 tournament. What does that tell you about the way this team can bounce back? I mean, obviously giving up 16 runs in that opening game against TCU, then coming back and completely shutting out Texas.
Yeah, well, TCU's putting up numbers on everyone. They did the same kind of thing to Kansas. Yeah, it's been interesting. They have a really good team. They just haven't been consistent enough. And I don't, when you get to the postseason, you got to have a level of consistency, or you just don't stand much of a chance. So we'll see. Look, I've been around college sports a lot, and I've seen a lot of bubble watches through my days. This feels like a team that's out. but we'll find out what the committee does, because Big 12 baseball, maybe not as good as the SEC, but it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's been an interesting conference all year. All right, Fitz, let's talk hoops. It's still not really any player movement here. I mean, it's May 26th. I know we've got decisions to be made with the NBA draft in the next 2 weeks, but it's starting to get to the point where we need to see some guys here pretty soon.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this was still early by last year's schedule, seemingly. This is about when we started to wonder if he was going to have a basketball team a year ago, but Jerome Tang seemed to pull that out just fine. But, the rules changed a little bit this year. Nobody's going into the portal as of now. The only guys that can kind of be a surprise would be, grad transfers who don't technically have to go into the portal. They're just grad transfers. So we'll find out who drops out of that NBA draft. That seems to be what they're on hold with some guys, but they wouldn't be the only ones contending for them. There are still some pretty good players out there. We'll see how this all pans out. But they have 3 spots they still need to fill.
What do we know about the players, Fitz, from the Wildcats that are testing the NBA waters? Obviously, Keontae Johnson, Naquan Tomlin, I know, is going through that process. What sort of feedback have you heard that these players are getting, and what does it look like for their future prospects?
Well, I'll be shocked if Naquan doesn't come back. I'm not hearing much about him. I hope he's getting good feedback, because he has an NBA game inside of him. It's just not there yet. Keontae's left that door open, but it's one of those doors that appears to be shut, but it just isn't latched. That's how gone he is. I'm seeing projections of him late first or second round, and he's pushing 24. He's been through a lot. His value isn't going to go up with age. So unless someone delivers a huge NIL deal, I'll be surprised if he returns.
But is it enough to keep up with the Joneses? Like, we've seen Kansas have, an up and down off season, but it's now landed in the point where Kansas, to me, is going to be the favorite next year. Because that's where K-State sort of elevated itself last 2. So if it's keeping up with Kansas, they haven't done that now, at least to this point. And I don't think it's possible at this point, quite frankly.
Yeah, especially with yesterday's revelation. But I'm not going to pass judgment on this. He's earned that after last year, but I also don't blame people for getting a little worried about this. We'll see how it pans out. They feel really good about their incoming freshman. They feel really good about Taj Manning, who redshirted this year. So the question becomes, does he get his experience at the guard position that he was seeking? I mean, that's really the big question. Yeah, he certainly would like to have an athletic big man who would be coming out of Kansas. Certainly looks like he might be the top of that list right now. After, I guess, a little bit surprising not committing to Duke. So we'll see how it goes. I'm willing to give him some more time. I just feel like they're pretty confident in their plan, as they were last year, and I don't think it's blind confidence. I think they just know that there's enough talent out there that they can get.
Let's shift gears here a little bit, Fitz, and talk football. Cat Backers event going on this week, and got Coach Kleiman and others traveling around the state talking to different people. We had Colin Klein on the show on Tuesday. It was great to talk to him and catch up with him. What are you hearing as far as off season and where things stand right now for Kleiman and football?
Well, Chris Kleiman had an interesting comment at yesterday's Cat Backer event. Maybe Topeka, I'm not sure, that he knows where he's going to end his career, and it's at Kansas State. And then we wake up this morning and see Iowa Athletic Director Gary Barta, who's retiring. And I think that secret fear of all K-Staters, not even that secret, is that Gene Taylor will go back to Iowa as AD, and they probably need to make a coaching change eventually up there. And that seems a little scary for everyone. We'll see how that plays out. But I think Chris Kleiman is beginning to grasp it as the Big 12 evolves into something a little bit different. He has an opportunity to build the program in this conference. And, he's not doing it on the cheap. He's not doing it cutting corners. He's building this thing with a great foundation of recruiting and coaching. And I think he's right. I think he has an opportunity. It's going to kind of have to thread the needle to get to where Bill Snyder was, back in the day. But where Bill Snyder was back in the day would certainly rule the roost in this new Big 12, at least for the short term.
This Iowa thing is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like Gene Taylor is, they could, if he just rides it out at this point, they may put a statue up of Gene Taylor in Manhattan. Is it really that appealing to go back? I was a mess, man. Gene Taylor's not a spring chicken. No offense to Gene Taylor, but do you really want to take on that stress and pressure when you're good in Manhattan probably forever at this point?
Yeah, and Gene's 65. He doesn't act it or look it, or I don't even know what acting and looking like 65 is anymore. That whole concept has changed, aging. But does that make him less attractive to Iowa, or does that not matter to them? But it's been no great secret that Iowa is the place both Gene and Chris kind of call home, would be their place that they would like to go together. And kind of seeing one of the pieces, fall that could make that happen. It's a little nerve-wracking. But again, I don't see why you walk away from this. And I would think that, just some kind of showing by President Litton that Gene Taylor is valued and that, the coaches aren't the only ones who deserve raises, even though Gene just got one not too long ago. Gene's around the $900,000 mark, above it, I think, in terms of his contract value. And it looks like Gary Barta was just a hair over $1 million. So it seems like getting him to that wouldn't be that huge a deal. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It just broke this morning, and so there's a lot to go on. But if anyone saw what Gene Taylor and Chris Kleiman thought of beating Iowa State, they just have to see the post-game celebration on the field. That was really valuable to them as guys that have kind of been Iowa fans. Chris played at Northern Iowa, but Iowa's the school in the state of Iowa. So we'll see. I think Gene's not going anywhere for exactly what you said.
So let's say, just hypothetically, Fitz, that there is a change that's made, and if Gene Taylor happens to be the guy at Iowa, there's clearly potentially a trickle down effect there, right? Like it starts with Gene Taylor and then Chris Kleiman. What does that mean as you get further down the line? Like Colin Klein, and Klein's got a new contract and he wants to be a head coach someday. What is there I know that if Kleiman, has stated publicly that he wants to retire at K-State and be there for the rest of his career, how does everything else behind the scenes with the coordinators and all of that work?
Yeah, I think we all agree that Colin Klein potentially will eventually be the head coach at Kansas State. But I think we probably also agree that he's not quite ready for that. And that's a big step up at his age. Maybe he is. And, I think that would be everyone's first inclination would be to put him in place. I personally might look at Van Malone or Connor Riley. If Gene Taylor does leave, I think you probably bring on Larry Beach from Memphis, who seems like a logical hire, who's done a good job in Memphis, got something done there that hasn't been able to get done, and that's funding for fixing up the Liberty Bowl. There are a lot of dominoes that could start falling in different directions than we expected pretty soon if one of those guys departs. And again, I don't think it'll happen, but it is something to mull over here. And I hope Richard Linton understands that the importance of what's going on right now at K-State. My understanding is applications to Kansas State are way up again. No offense to the academic side of that equation, but I think that's because the front porch looks pretty damn good right now, and that'd be football and basketball, and it's inviting in a lot of potential students.
It is. That's the bottom line. People always say, "Oh, how can these coaches make that much money?" I always use the example of go look at Alabama enrollment before and after Nick Saban. You'll understand why real quick. You know, Klein's age, we talked to Klein earlier this week. He was fantastic, as he always is, right? It's easy to understand his success. But I mean, the thing about that, Lincoln Riley has showed the path to that doesn't matter, right? Lincoln Riley was never a head coach. Lincoln Riley was young. Lincoln Riley clearly had it and everything else. And to the point where it even felt like Bob Stoops left early just to ensure they were able to keep him, the ultimate Oklahoma guy, right? That's the way that Klein is feeling to me. Now, you'd like to see maybe another year but is one more year as an offensive coordinator going to make him that much more qualified? I don't know. I don't know that. I think to me, it becomes more of a question is, does he want to go to the NFL or not? Because that would become to me the more pressing decision to make.
And young coaches right now, young head coaches are kind of the trend. People are going younger and younger. With that comes a big risk. I mean, you can get someone that just clearly isn't ready in that point of their career to handle that kind of responsibility. But also the rewards are probably greater. I could make an argument that Lincoln Riley has been an incredible head coach, but probably had a lot of stuff to learn on the job. But
does it matter if you're a great recruiter? Does it matter if you're a great head coach? Wouldn't you rather have a great recruiter that has a learning curve than a great coach that can't recruit?
Well, I think as a head coach, you do have to be able to close. I mean, Deion's a different story. Deion Sanders is at the forefront of everything Colorado or Jackson State did in terms of recruiting. But I think the biggest thing for a head coach is being able to manage your staff and manage your locker room, because you can't lose control of either one. If your staff kind of pushes back on your youth, you got problems. You hired the wrong guys. If the locker room doesn't fully buy into you because of your youth, or you're just not good at managing a locker room, kind of cultivating that environment, which is things that we've seen both Chris Kleiman and now Jerome Tang do to the top level of their profession. If you're not able to do that, if you lose your locker room, you're going to be in big trouble. But we've seen older guys do that. Jimbo Fisher, hasn't managed his locker rooms exceptionally well, and that's in part because of the NIL. But there's a lot of moving parts there that can make a head coach successful. And I mentioned his youth, but we've also seen a lot of older coaches finally get their crack and prove that they absolutely were not the guy to be a head coach. So it's kind of a crapshoot whether you hire young or old. But I would guess that would be the first reaction of Kansas State would be to bring in Colin Klein, just move him up. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Gene will leave. I don't think Chris is leaving. I think they're pretty settled in. They know what they've built. They don't want to start over.
Well, we would be remiss, Fitz, to have you on and not talk conference realignment a little bit here. Of course, it changes day by day, right? Dennis Dodd with a couple of new articles this week about some drama with the ACC and everything going on with that. And then we get the report that Brett Yormark is meeting with representatives from UConn. Where do you stand right now? What are you hearing? What are your thoughts on the way that things are playing out right now?
Well, the continuing saga of the Pac-12 media rights and the fact that they can't find any is really the core of this story. And I think we're getting to the point now, finally. I thought it would happen earlier, but as we get towards June, you start to push deadlines for schools to be able to announce they're leaving their conferences. I know that certainly the Mountain West for San Diego State at the end of June, they want a decision on either the Big 12 or the Pac-12. They plan on moving if offered by either or both. And, certainly there's a lot more smoke right now around Colorado, and that they're prepared to do something. And I think that could come potentially from the tone that I'm reading from, people out there, is that Memorial Day weekend, before or after that could be the time this stuff drops. And once Colorado moves, or one team moves, I think Arizona will join them and at least show a strong intention of coming. The bottom basic problem here is the Pac-12 can't find the media money that they need to have to stick together. And if they start to crack, does the Big Ten and come in and take some schools in the Northwest? And I just think I still think the future is very bleak for that conference. And the ACC is a very complicated situation because of their contracts, but there seems to be a lot of confidence out there. If they really wanted to, they could crack that conference open and damn the grant of rights, they could dissolve the conference if they want to. It just seems like that's where it's headed, that they may not be placated enough by the rights sharing, getting some success-based financials from the conference. There's just not enough money there. They're not going to be able to make up enough money, and taking away money from other members just isn't going to foster good relations there. So I think the ACC is going to open up too, and I think his discussions with UConn's all a chess play to try to move these other things along the path a little bit to show that he's planning on expanding and who wants in.
All right, Fitz. Time will tell. Maybe we say that every time, but it is coming. The clock is ticking on a lot of these decisions, and the summertime is a great time to make them. What do you guys have at Go Power Cat ready for people right now?
Well, we'll be back to baseball certainly today, but we've got our podcast up. I've got my daily deliveries up. I discussed basketball official John Higgins today on the daily delivery, and I was kind of been an evil presence for a lot of fan bases in college basketball, but he also could be the guy now that he's moving out of officiating and into a supervisory role for a bunch of conferences that maybe could help improve college officiating across the board. But we'll see. But it is a little bit quieter right now, thankfully. I would like to have a Memorial Day weekend too. So let's see what all breaks loose. But at least I got some topics here to discuss over the next couple of days with my daily deliveries with Gene Taylor and the Iowa situation.
And the great competition of Jacob's Hot Legs versus Tommy's Ribs, which the invitation is open. Yes. If you guys need a food review, come on up or come on down, I guess it is.
Is it Jacob's Hot Legs and Tommy's Sexy Ribs? I mean, I think that'd be better. I think that's better marketing.
That's up to Tommy.
From your lips to God's ears.
Yes, indeed. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and let's all remember why we have Memorial Day.
That's right. Thank you, Tim. Good reminder. Hope everybody does take that moment to remember why it is that we get to do hot legs and ribs and all these things. That's the reason for the season for sure. All right, Tim, be good. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, boys. Bet.
There goes Tim Fitzgerald, our K-State insider. We'll come back. More Sports Daily. Let's talk about this Patrick Mahomes contract situation. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily. It's all Brockton Caster. It is a Friday, getting ready for the Memorial Day weekend. A lot of chatter on the video stream about our little cooking contest we've got going this weekend. Joe, I noticed Tommy throws up the first comment there.
Let's go, Joe.
Because he goes to Tommy. But Jad is team hot legs. Jad commenting in there just the same. There's Jad. Thanks, everybody, by the way, for watching us. You can listen to us, of course, always on KFH, and we love and appreciate that. But you can now, if you're, not by the radio or able to stream us or whatever, we do have this video feed that you can find on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. Glad to have you in both places. Glad to see everybody here. This contract for Patrick Mahomes, Tommy, there was a report from Florio that he suspects or expects this to get done. We've heard the chatter. Mahomes comes out this week now, and just to set it up, Patrick Mahomes soon, when whatever the deal Burrow and Herbert get, Mahomes will be like the 9th highest paid quarterback by guaranteed money or yearly salary or whatever. There's different ways to look at those contracts. I don't think it matters. So, it's interesting because we had that report and then it was like, is there really urgency on this? And that seemed odd, but, felt like, and the Chiefs have talked about it, that they want to get the deal done. But Patrick Mahomes comes out in OTAs this week to just sort of reestablish publicly that his priority is not to, make sure he's the highest paid quarterback. It's more about winning championships and legacy, which he's in a unique position to do. But he also talks about his desire and need for everybody else to continue the bar in the right direction, like for the other quarterbacks in the league. Mahomes always, he just always gets it right in how he approaches and talks about this stuff. Because, and I think there's a ton of truth to that. There is pressure when you're in a union like that to continue to, raise salaries for your peers, which he could absolutely do. There's also this, loyalty to the Chiefs he has. And the other elephant in the room, Tommy, is Patrick Mahomes is going to earn more than most quarterbacks because he's the most marketable athlete in America right now. And so it is a different situation than a lot of these guys face. Do you see, Joe Burrow in a lot of ads at this point? Is he in everything? You know what I mean? Like it is different. You see Lamar Jackson in every ad that you can see. Like it's different for these guys. So, different priorities for different people. And I totally get it. I've contended, and I brought this up to the national audience last weekend. I'll bring it up again tomorrow when I jump on there. I think there's a real chance here that there is something unique about this next Mahomes contract, like that we've never seen before. I think somebody was floating around, it may have been Florio again on Pat McAfee yesterday, floating around the idea of a percentage of the salary cap and Burrow being a candidate to do something like that. That makes sense to me. But I think with Mahomes, it gets bigger. Mahomes has an interest in owning pro teams, right? He's a minority owner of the Royals. He and his wife own the women's soccer franchise there, the Current. I think there's a real chance there could be some sort of partnership at an organizational level between the Chiefs and Mahomes that could become that thing in his next contract that's unique and allows these things to happen. Now, I don't know the rules of that in the NFL.
You got to be real careful about that.
Well, but remember when the Dolphins and Brady got in trouble, really the Dolphins, that was a part of that, right? Like the whole report was that he was going to go be their quarterback and be a part owner. What I mean about the rules, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just don't know how it affects the salary cap. So like let's say Mahomes comes in and they're like, yeah, we want to make you a part of the ownership group or give you a stake in the team and all these things. How do you evaluate that, right, against the salary cap? That's what I'm not real sure of and where that could get a little dicey. But I think that if there's any player in sports, right, that any pro team would like to make sure they never have any other part of any other organization, Mahomes is right at the top of that list. And we see it all the time, right? Think about New England. They let Tom Brady go to Tampa and win a Super Bowl. Think about Indianapolis. They let Peyton Manning go to Denver and win a Super Bowl. Okay, that kind of sucks for them a little bit. You don't want that to happen if you're the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. You've got it with George Brett, right? You got it with George Brett and the Royals. You want the same sort of thing. So I don't know how that looks. I think it's unique, but I think it's reassuring again if you're a Chiefs fan to hear Mahomes say those things. It's championships. Like, look, I there are responsibilities I have to, to get this deal and do. But at the forefront of it all will be this cohesion with the front office to make sure they've got the flexibility they need to do what they need to do.
One thing we know about Patrick Mahomes is that he's always going to say the right thing and do the right thing. That's just the way that he is. It's the way that he's built. It's the way that he has acted in his entire career in Kansas City. And so there's no reason to doubt him or his intentions because he's never shown a reason to do that. He's never shown a reason otherwise. So when he talks about legacy being the most important thing to him and making sure that there's money in the budget to have talented players around him to win championships, I believe him because he's never given me any reason not to believe him when he's talking about those sort of things. Now, the other thing that I can say is that the Chiefs organization and Clark Hunt and Brett Veach, they've never given me any indication that they aren't fully committed in making sure that they take care of this transformational quarterback that the Chiefs have had on their roster for the last 6 seasons, and they want to have him on their roster for his entire career, right? So, nobody has a crystal ball, so you don't know what's going to happen a decade from now or 15 years from now or whatever that is. But what I do know is that at least here in the short term, there will be a new contract for Patrick Mahomes, and it will elevate him to a level that we haven't seen in the NFL whenever that time comes, whether that's here, before this season or, sometime in the future. It will reset the market. That's just the way that it is. Doesn't matter when it's going to come down, but it is nice to hear from Mahomes that at least, from his voice, that in his mind, that's not the most important thing on the table right now.
It is such a slippery slope, right? I'm sure Indianapolis, when Peyton Manning was 28 years old, would have said the same thing. And New England, when Tom Brady was 28 years old, would have said the same thing, right? But Peyton Manning got hurt and Tom Brady got old. And then there had to be uncomfortable. Look at what just happened with Aaron Rodgers. There has to be uncomfortable conversations. That's where it's a bit of a slippery slope, right? And yeah, the Chiefs have navigated it wonderfully now, but the success on the field has made it easy to do that, right?
I just don't understand what the point
success
is
on the
getting,
field isn't there.
I don't understand what the point is of getting, and I'm not saying you're getting worked up, but just in general, getting worked up about what might happen 10 years from now. I understand putting together a contract that takes care of him and the organization for as long as possible, resets the market, whatever, all of that. I'm totally on board with because you've got to pay this guy who has been the catalyst for, this dynasty that's in place. But also I kind of am interested in living in the moment and living in this season and, next season or whatever, as opposed to 10 years from now. We don't know what's going to happen.
What the reason it's important and the reason it's relevant is because there is this mutual desire to not hamstring the franchise's ability to spend money on other players. So if they're trying to accomplish all of these goals, for Mahomes, it's taking care of his peers and what they'll be able to bring on the open market, right? For the Chiefs, it's not hamstringing the franchise financially. And Mahomes has that interest there as well because he wants to win as many championships as he can. Okay, so all of those things, right, are in play here. So creativity is going to have to come into play if all of those things can be accomplished. That's why it's interesting. That's why I think there's going to be some creative element involved in it that makes this different than other deals that we've seen. Because the simple answer for everybody, right, is for the Chiefs just to say, Mahomes, you're going to be the highest paid quarterback. But they don't want that, and neither does Mahomes. Not in that way, right? And it's different for different guys. Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, we think, and Justin Herbert, we think, as they do, their top priority is going to be to make as much money as they possibly can right now. I mean, that's that's going to be the priorities for their deals, we think, because history tells us it is. It isn't very often where you get this situation. The two that I can remember the most are Romo and Brady, and I'm sure there have been other guys that have done it, but those two jump to the front of my mind as guys who have done creative things in order to allow the franchise to spend and do these things. So Mahomes clearly wants to do that. But what is that? What does that look like? Is it just basically redoing the current deal that they have with more money involved because the cap's gone up? I suppose that's on the table, right? Because they just restructured Mahomes this year to free up money. That's the contract. Like the Romo and Brady contracts just kept getting restructured to free up more money. They allowed that flexibility. That's what Mahomes' deal he's currently on does. Maybe they just redo that. I don't know. But I just have this feeling that there's going to be some element of creativity involved in it, that because the Chiefs are going to want to, sort of extend that back to Mahomes, because Mahomes is extending them a favor here. He's extending himself a favor, to try to win championships, but he's extending them a favor in not making sure that he makes $60 million a year right now, because he could easily do that. And they would say, yes, sir, let's sign that deal tomorrow if that's what we really need to do. So I don't know. I don't know what happens here. It is going to be very interesting. I think the one thing that's changed in the last 24 hours or so is the sense of urgency, because I don't get that sense from Mahomes that there really is any sense of urgency. It needs to get done. There is a timing element involved, but that report that it's like a clock is ticking to the start of the next season, I don't know. Like, I don't think it's kind of like Chris Jones. Like, they're going to let the market play out and then get after it and do what they need to do. But I don't sense any urgency on a new Mahomes deal.
Well, yeah, and I think that that's the important thing, right? Is that you are making sure that you're in lockstep. And I know that and I've heard Brett Veach on the record talking about that they have an open line of communication with Mahomes and his representatives and all of that, and we've talked before about, isn't it Lee Steinberg that represents Mahomes? We talked about how successful he's been as far as, the deals that he's made and that sort of thing. And so it sounds to me that there is as positive of a relationship that there possibly can be between Mahomes, his representatives, and the franchise. And as long as that continues, and as long as there's an open line of communication, as long as, priorities are in place on both sides and everybody is working together towards a common goal, then I've got no concerns whatsoever about the timeline on this, about, the terms of the deal, anything like that. And I would argue that the majority of the time that you've got situations that start to get messy, and I mean, look at Aaron Rodgers in that situation. All of a sudden, you had the player, the representatives, and the organization no longer on the same page, no longer communicating well, or really even communicating at all. And then things break down. And I think that's one thing that Mahomes and Veach have made very sure that they are doing at a high level, is communicating constantly. And so, I would imagine that if Mahomes went to Veach or Steinberg went to Veach and said, all right, the time is now. We need to get this done right now. It's important to us to get this done and get it taken care of, they would probably figure out a way to get it done. I just don't get that indication that that's really happening right now.
And all of those things exist, and they do, and it takes a certain type of personality and Patrick Mahomes to be able to do that. The only thing that's gotta, I think, just sort of stick in the back of our minds that can be filed away is if the success goes away, so does this friendliness, I think. And I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not saying I do. Just saying the only place I feel urgency is from a home side is like anything can happen. And if we're not, going to AFC championships every year and all of these things, these mutual interests begin to change a little bit. And that is, a place where if you're Mahomes, you got to, and he did say, look, he said, like, I've already made enough money that I don't ever need to make any more money and I'll be fine. And that matters, right? Because I think not everybody feels that way. I would feel that way, I think, if I were in Mahomes' position, but he does feel a responsibility to his peers. But maybe that concern of it may not always be this way. Maybe that's not as big a concern for Mahomes, and that factors in too. But it will be fascinating. I think far more fascinating than Herbert and Burrow, who we think will just get paid a whole lot of money. How the next Mahomes deal is structured will be really, really interesting if you're a nerd for those things like we are. 869-1240 is the number to call. We'll come back. Sports Daily, plenty more to come. The IHOP hotline is open. 869-1240 is that number. More Sports Daily coming right back right after this.
You're listening to Sports Daily with Jacob and Tommy. Still to come, Jim Rome at 11, right here on KFH.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
Welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily. Glad to be here with you just ahead of the Memorial Day weekend. Tommy, LeBron James playing with a torn tendon in his right foot, saying he heard it pop. On the court cameras on February 26th against the Mavericks saw him saying, I heard it pop. Torn tendon in his foot. We're the same age as LeBron James. If I tore a tendon in my foot, I'd be out for like a month. Right?
Yeah, there are sometimes I cough wrong and I can barely move, for like 10 minutes afterwards. So I can't imagine popping a tendon in my foot.
I have thrown my back out putting on socks. That is a true story. Man, I just can't fathom the athletic prowess sometimes of these dudes. So LeBron has this torn tendon. Guys were telling him, some doctors told him he needed to get that fixed, season-ending surgery. He found a doctor, I think, that helped him manage it, get through it. We remember how good he was in the Western Conference Finals. Two things. You got to deal with that if he's going to come back and play, and how much better could he be, right? So it's interesting. In LeBron James, I think he's playing next year. And obviously this has been lingering for a while. I suppose he'll just get it fixed. I don't know what the process of fixing a torn tendon in your foot is. But man, that's just, add to the legacy. He didn't really talk about it. We never really heard about it that I can recall, other than seeing that video of him saying, I heard it pop. But just crazy. But age is catching up. And at what point does it slow him down? Clearly, while he was dealing with the injury, it didn't slow him down. So I suspect this will be fine, and he'll be able to get it done and taken care of and be back and be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to keep in mind that at the age that he's at right now, there might be a little bit of a longer recovery period than, let's say, if he was 25. But regardless, I mean, knowing the fact that he is, so physically gifted, I've got no doubt in my mind that, if he gets this fixed this offseason, he'll be back ready to go. And knowing the kind of output he had, especially in the Western Conference Finals with the torn tendon in his foot, I can only imagine a fully healthy LeBron next season, what he'll be able to do.
Is there any doubt whatsoever, right, that he's coming back next year? Like, I just don't have, I feel like it's like a 0% chance he retires.
He'll be back. I would be blown away if LeBron does not play next season. I think that there is enough there with the core of the Lakers where he would feel like, with a few off-season changes and additions, that they could be a real competitor in the West. And knowing that, and knowing that the window of opportunity is, still there, it's not closed all the way, there's not a doubt in my mind that he will be back next season.
Me neither. I just don't like 0% chance that he doesn't play next year. Zero. I feel like he's back. Crazy. Torn tendon in his foot. He comes and does that kind of stuff in the finals. So do you think, real quick on this, because Kyrie Irving doesn't deserve a ton of our attention at the moment, do you think any chance that they bring Kyrie Irving into the Lakers?
Yeah,
they can get him.
I think that they will.
They can get him.
They will. I think they will. I mean, I think that the fact that, he found himself courtside, for the majority of that series and was there apparently supporting LeBron. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that those two guys have had conversations about what it might look like to team up. I don't know.
Is that like the only place that makes sense?
I guess. I mean, you mentioned that you don't want to give a ton of time right now to Kyrie. I don't know if I ever want to give a ton of time to Kyrie, but I mean, it's there, it's out there in the open. It wouldn't surprise me to, see him be a member of the Lakers next season.
Yeah, that's about the only path for him to be relevant anymore that I can see. I don't know what that means for the Mavericks. I don't know. We don't need to get too much into Kyrie Irving. He loves the attention. All right, 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. Running out of time on that. We've given away some Wind Surge tickets. Let's give away a couple of, it is Memorial Day weekend. Get you some iced tea. Let's give away a couple of free iced tea cards. Those work for you at HTO Wichita West or HTO Wichita East. You can get your hands on those and let that be a part of your celebration this weekend. Let's not forget why we celebrate this weekend. 869-1240. As we go to the break here, you can get your hands on those tea cards. We will tell you what's on tap when we return. We've got Royals all over the weekend here. All kinds of good stuff coming for you. It is Sports Daily. You'll have Jim Rome, Bob and Jeff, Maggie and Perlop, Zach Gelb, Royals tonight. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on tap for the rest of the weekend. Get your hands on that giveaway right now. IHOP hotline, first caller, HTO free tea. We'll be right back. We'll wrap up this Friday edition. All right, congrats to Mike for taking home the HDOT this weekend. Tommy, we got a barbecue coming up. The stakes are high.
Here we go.
I hope nobody invites a librarian to the barbecue.
Why?
Because he'll just bring shush kebabs. Shush kebabs.
I'd rather have shush kebabs than your hot legs. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, keep talking, big guy. We'll see about that in about 48 hours. All right, everybody. Remember the reason for the season this weekend. Thank you to everyone who has given us the ability to do this and their loved ones. We'll be back on Tuesday. No show Monday. Jacob and Tommy, Jad producing. We'll see you then.